All right, let's keep that spoiler text on the screen because now it's time to talk about House of the Dragon. Um, I have been watching this show week to week. Haven't really had a chance to talk so much about it because of obviously all the other stuff that's been happening as far as movies are concerned. And to be honest, there is just so much TV content now out there. We had at one point where I was catching up week to week, we had House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, She Hulk, and Andor, right? Plus, prior to that, we had Cobra Kai, the latest season of Cobra Kai, and The Sandman that dropped on Netflix. So there was just so much to really catch up on and really follow every week. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't try. So obviously I was watching this, and apparently so many other people were watching it too because with the season finale airing last night, basically there's people talking about the numbers and all that and how the finale drew big numbers. So in this article, you see like around 9.3 million viewers turned into the season finale of HBO's House of the Dragon. That marks the premium cabler's biggest finale night for a series since the conclusion of Game of Thrones in May of 2019, that pulled in 19.8 million viewers around the same period. They talked about the metrics and how they pulled the numbers and all that. They said surprisingly, it's not the high water mark of the season because that belongs to the show's second episode, which managed 10.2 million viewers. So obviously, probably with the pilot airing and word of mouth and all that stuff like that, more people were kind of curious about the show, right? But the fact that it has such stiff competition, because now we're in football season, right? So obviously, football's huge in America. Plus, we had the American League Championship Series where the Yankees kind of choked and got swept by the Astros. But I'm pretty sure a lot of people were really watching that, especially since there was a delayed start time because of rain here in New York. But they're saying that, again, all the episodes of the series are averaging around 29 million viewers in the US, more than triple their average debut night audience, thanks to strong catch up viewing. Because a lot of people don't get to watch these episodes when they're released on that night, right? I know Sundays are meant for HBO and all that stuff like that, but I feel like these days that hasn't really been a lot of the case. But a lot of people do tend to watch these episodes on Monday or Tuesday or whatever have you, right? But I was able to watch it, and my God, this episode was, I think I yelled out loud in shock twice or three times. Um, it was just well, it was just really well written and well put together, and it was interesting how episode 9 really focused a lot on Allison and kind of how she's dealing with the death of Veneris, who's her husband, obviously, right? And then learning about the secret plan to get her son up onto the throne, right? And totally ignore the original proclamation that Rhaenyra was the heir, the next in line, right? So it was really interesting to see how that all played out and how Rhaenys, and again, I should mention this. One, I've never read any of the books. Two, I'm very bad when it comes to names, especially with these characters. So if you're looking for like an expert opinion and review and deep, thorough analysis, there's so many other videos and channels out there who will probably do a better job than I am. I am more of that casual viewer that just loves this stuff and loves talking about it. And maybe I can speak to a more general casual audience about my reaction and how I felt about the whole thing. So just wanted to put that out there because I don't want anyone flaming me in the comments like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not how you pronounce her name in Bitty Booty Bee. Look, relax. All right. I love the show. All right. And I thought this season was brilliant. I wasn't sure, honestly, how I would react to this season, especially with all the stuff that's happened with Game of Thrones, especially during that last season there. How that disappointed a lot of people, and I understood the disappointment. But I think this really surprised a lot of people, and they did a lot of different things that we weren't accustomed to in Game of Thrones, which added to that, right? But it was interesting to see Rhaenys, kind of not want to kneel to the new king and breaking out with her dragon, and we knew immediately she was going to go to tell Rhaenyra and Daemon about what happened. And you knew Alice was like, oh no, what's going to happen now, right? So this whole episode was truly dedicated to just Rhaenyra, right? Just her take on the death of her father and learning about the treason and appointing another king above her, right? And how they were going to deal with it. And it was just really fascinating, and it's so good to see the acting really come out in this movie. I mean, in this episode, especially I don't know why we always have to have major news when there's a pregnancy happening. So we have another pregnancy happening, but she loses the baby. So it's like she gets the word from that her father died. She is not really appointed queen. They did this public appointing of another king above her, and then now she's in labor, right? And you could tell she's just in so much stress and anguish and all that stuff like that, that in a way she kind of wanted to get rid of this baby because she wanted to deal with everything else head on, right? So she forced she kind of forced the labor without any help, and I'm pretty sure that's what caused the baby to die as it came out. I mean, you could see like the umbilical cord was still around the neck, and she was just refusing to help and all that. And this was so devastating, especially for Damon, because he wanted a proper child within that bloodline. You know, and especially since she already has these bastards as kids, this would at least let everyone forget about them for a bit. Even though she loves him to death and all that, but he wanted something for himself. And you could tell like he was so devastated by this. And I bet you in a way he kind of blames her for what happened. But that being said, you know, the rest of the episode is them just trying to figure out what are they going to do. Damon wants to go to war immediately. He wants to retaliate. Rhaenyra doesn't, because she has more of her father in her, right? So she definitely wants to like keep the kingdoms at bay and peace, and then will react accordingly, right? Um, but the rest of the episode, it and again another heartbreaking moment at the end where she learns that now she has the support of Rhaenys and her husband that finally woke up from his coma or whatever the case is. And she comes to learn that they have full control of like the shipping channels. So if they want to kind of bleed them by not letting them get supplies and all that stuff like that, and then hit them on with the support and all that, then that would probably be the best suit. But she's like, well, we have to make sure that we have these other kingdoms in alignment. So let's go find out. And of course, this is where we get now more involvement with the Starks and the Baratheons and all that stuff like that. But how her own kids decided to be the messengers, right? And oh, it was so heartbreaking with her youngest. I believe that was Luke. Oh my God, the one who was responsible for Aemon's loss of his eye, and how he was already nervous, and they had a really interesting conversation before all of this happened, where you know he says like, I'm not like you, mom. Like I know I'm next in line for you're like, if the sea snake dies, I'm the next one to rule this kingdom and all this stuff. But I can't do it, like I'm not like you. I'm not perfect like you. And that was just such a heartwarming moment between the two. And but then I should have known that was like foreshadowing that something was gonna happen. Um, and then so when he agreed to go to meet up with the Starks, and deliver the message that these people should not forget that they've already pledged allegiance to her being queen if her father was to pass, and who already beat him to the punch. Aemon, the same dude that lost his eye because of him. And he was ready to fight at that moment, and the poor boy was trying to escape, in his little baby dragon, but Aemon has that giant dragon. And oh man, I thought this whole scene was so well done, how the baby dragon can really maneuver. The big dragon cannot. It's just this big intimidating force. So at first you're like, "Oh, he can escape," and you could tell Aemon was just being a bully, right? And all that. But then, oh man, all he had to do was just escape, but he had to kind of come back, breathe fire, shot the dragon in the face with it, and then ran away. And because of that moment, Aemon actually lost control of the dragon for a bit. Because now the dragon's just acting dragon, right? And dragon's pissed. So dragon's on the hunt. And of course, what happened? Boom. Dragon found him, ate him up, and that's it. There goes the little man. Done. And Aemon, for that moment, was just like, what the fuck did I just do? Holy shit. And then news went back to Rhaenyra, and that look she gives you in the camera. Oh, devastating and scary. The episode was called, I believe, The Black Queen. Oh man. If you watch also the like kind of like the recap with like creators and actors and all that, they mentioned the Dance of the Dragons. Again, I don't know anything about the books and all that, but this is basically what leads to that, because one of the things that Damon and the rest of the council was talking about was like, we control dragons. They have four. We have more than that, and we can get more, right? There are a lot of the wild dragons out there that aren't tamed yet. So we can go out there and get them, and we could just basically show our brute force with these dragons. Um, and I feel like in season 2, we're going to be seeing a lot of that. And that's one of the greatest things about this show, because in Game of Thrones, it was all about, humans battling out. Of course, there's a lot of supernatural entities and all that stuff like that. And of course, it was all about the walkers, coming over and learning how to stop them and dealing with all that stuff like that. But we got a glimpse of dragons, um, because of the three dragons that were birthed, and we got to see them, do their thing for a little bit. But in this era, we are getting to see the real utilization of dragons and how that really works well within the army, within the forces, within the kingdom, and all that. And I think that's so good. It's so brilliant. It's so much fun to watch. But yeah, this season ended with a huge bang, and you really felt that impact of like all the things that are culminating throughout, you know, growing up with these characters, right? You know, when when they approached Rhaenyra at Dragonstone, you had the hand Otto, right, delivering a message, trying to strike a bargain, a deal, saying like, if you bend the knee, then we'll make sure that you have proper ownership of Dragonstone and this and that, and your kids can, be servants and all that kind of stuff like that. But he had a special message, and it was a throwback to, I believe it was episode 1 or 2, when Alicent and Rhaenyra were kids, and how they were reading about the tales of the old days and all that. And she ripped up a page to give it to Alicent, because this was someone that they looked up to, right? A former ruler or warrior. I don't remember verbatim, and how she was presented with this page from Alicent, Allison still remembers their friendship and their love that they had. You know, in we saw previously right before Veneris dies that the whole family was able to be gathered back together. Even though dysfunctional as they are, you have this poor dude that's been rotting and pretty much losing limbs and all that stuff through his life. And he looks on this side and he's like, yeah, I have my daughter who's married my brother. I look over here, here's my wife, right? And my nutty kids, my one son who likes to whack it off outside windows, get handmaidens pregnant and everything like that. One lost an eye because the sons of my daughter that she had with some other dude, you know, had a fight with him, and now they want to marry their cousins, right? So it's kind of like this crazy dysfunctional family, but family nonetheless, right? And it was, you know, that's where Allison and Rhaenyra finally had a rekindling. And, you felt that it was genuine, that they really genuinely wanted their friendship and their love back. And then Veneris dies. And then Veneris, in his crazy state, tells Allison the story of fire and ice, or fire and blood, or whatever the case is. Um, and how, you know, this person should rule, and it happened to be the name of her son. But he thought he was talking to Rhaenyra. So Allison mistook that for something else, and da da da, this and that. And oh my gosh. The best part about this series, again, that is classic Game of Thrones, is the political intrigue, the backstabbing, the chess matching, the strategy and everything like that. I loved how when this series started, I you well I maybe you did. I did not have any inclining that it was a story about Rhaenyra and Alicent and kind of the war that they were going to go back and forth with eventually. I honestly I thought the main focus was really going to be on Daemon. And Matt Smith did a brilliant job playing Daemon, and I can't wait to see more of that. But the earlier episodes were very heavily Daemon focused. But in the background, and what culminated throughout the season, was really the positioning and the battle between the two sides of the family within the same family, and that is Alicent Hightower and Rhaenyra Targaryen. And I thought just the writing between all of that stuff was just so well done, so well executed. I love the time jumps, because again, we didn't really see like that type of time jumps within Game of Thrones. I felt like, you know, maybe each season would have like a brief jump, between the seasons and all that. But within one season, we had time jumps of like 5 years, you know, whatever, how many years and all that. We saw people grow up. That's why they had to recast for the main roles there. Even though Millie Alcock and Emily Carey, as the younger versions of Rhaenyra and Alicent, did such a brilliant job. Then you get to see Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook fill in the roles, and everyone was just so good. And the casting was brilliant. I mean, they really casted well for this show, where you could really see that these are the older versions of the young ones that we saw already in the past. We got to see the kids grow up, so Aemond looking as crazy, and how he looks so much like Matt Smith, how he looks so much like Damon. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And there's going to be something where that's going to be the head to head right there. Damon and Aemon, I bet you that's going to be a big battle or confrontation or something of the sorts, right? Um, it was just it was, and plus the season was very easy to follow. I think one of the hardest things about Game of Thrones is that you have all of these different kingdoms and families. And even though everyone is vying for the throne, there's always turmoil within the same families too, right? So you have to really follow all of these things happening. Here we're following one main family, right? That's why we really didn't get a lot of introductions to a lot of the other houses and a lot of the other kingdoms. That's why now I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing more of what's happening in Winterfell with the Starks, the Baratheons, you know, all that stuff. I mean, we had like, the Sea people and all that, the High Towers, and what's the deal with freaking the Strongs too? Larry's Strong, and his feet fetish, and how Alicent was able to work with that and manipulate it just so she could get what she wants to get, and that loyalty. Um, yeah, again, really, really interesting stuff. The I will say the only disappointing thing that I had was kind of the treatment of some of the more ancillary characters like Missaria, portrayed by Sonoya Mizuno, who I thought she was going to be a more prominent character, especially since she was kind of like the mistress of Damon, right? Because Damon had no interest in his wife and all that. So I thought she was going to play more heavily into the storyline. Um, I mean, she had her moments too, especially with dealing with some of the kids and kind of doing a lot of the back end alley, secrets and manipulations and all that stuff like that. She showed up a couple of times, but I really thought she was going to be more in the forefront. Instead, Damon ended up, with marrying the daughter of the Sea King and all that stuff like that, and then he has his kids with her, and then she had a failed birth again, and asked the dragon to kill her and all that kind of stuff like that. I also I read an article also online that it was very interesting that and they weren't expecting people to fall in love with Damon, especially with like how evil he is and how like bad he is. And I think they're having not concerns, but they're just wondering how they're going to address this moving forward. But I'm not surprised. I mean, again, Damon is a very attractive character, especially with the way he thinks, the way he approaches things, how he took on that battle, by himself, and he was able to kill that crab digger or whatever they called him, right? Like I thought that was freaking awesome, really, and so it's no surprise. But then again, like if you look at the original Game of Thrones, a lot of people fell in love with Jaime Lannister, right? And he was not an angel by any means. Again, and that's another thing too. Like we didn't see much of the Lannisters at all, just very briefly, especially when they were trying to vie for the affections of Rhaenyra. But a lot of the other houses we really didn't get a chance to see a lot of. But that didn't bother me. I love that we focused on this one house, this one family, this one kingdom, and because there was enough conflict and turmoil within it, and just a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. But yeah, with how things ended, we're definitely going to war in season two, and the battle between the princesses there, the queens, Alicent and Rhaenyra. And I don't know what's gonna happen with the king, because I mean he didn't want it. He was kind of reluctant, and then he kind of got that taste of when people were cheering him on and all that. He was like, "Yeah, that's right, I am your king." And then when that dragon showed up, he kind of like pissed his pants and all that shit. But I loved how Allison stood. She still stood tall, and she was like, "I'm not backing down on this. Like this is my son, right? And this was the wish of his father, my husband, the king, even though it was false." So she was just bracing for impact because she was gonna go out with this, regardless. And again, brilliantly portrayed by Olivia Cook there. And again, Emma Darcy is just brilliant. So really, really loved this show. I had so much fun with it. I heard reports are saying now that season two will start filming early next year. So hopefully we won't have to wait too long for season two, unlike Rings of Power, which they don't really have a fully fleshed out script yet. I'm sure they're still going to figure out what they're going to do with the budget, because they did say that don't expect to see a season two for another 2 to 3 years at a minimum, right? and that is really unfortunate. So yeah, so again, let me know, like, how did again, I know a lot of people were watching this, and I think a lot of people were preferring this show over Rings of Power. And maybe right now, I mean, here's the question for all of you. Was House of the Dragon the show of the year with everything that's come out, and how much of an impact that this had with a lot of people in the fan base? Like, was this the best show on TV in this period or for the whole year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I want to know about it. And let me know your thoughts in the comments about what you thought about the season. How did you react and how did you feel about the last episode? What would you like to see in season 2? If you are a reader and a fan of the books, I would love to hear your thoughts of the adaptation so far. I've loosely heard that it is very similar, maybe with some liberties, but again, educate me. Let me know since I am not familiar with the books at all. I would love to hear all your thoughts about it.